Guys, this is Professor Vitt, and I'm here to give you a video review for our first exam in logic. So the way this will work, I'll just read out the question there, and then I'll compose a response right here and talk you through it. There aren't a lot of transitions, so remember, feel free to rewind or just back it up if you need me to repeat something. Okay, so first things first, your instructions will look something like this, right? The examination is going to be closed book, closed note. Spelling and grammar will count. So if we're taking a quiz and it's not a complete sentence, I tend not to be as worried about it. But when you're writing an exam, make sure that you write in complete sentences and look out for spelling errors and grammatical errors. I know that's tough when you don't have Word right in front of you, but it's part of the grading process. Okay, here we go. First question, what is logic? Okay, so a good answer would be logic is the study of argumentation. Now, you can certainly make that sound nicer, but that's the simple answer and that's the best answer. A hallmark of understanding is not complexity, it's simplicity. Can you explain this to someone in a very simple way? If you can, great, you're in good shape. If you can't, you've got some splaining to do. All right, so next question, number 2. Alice is walking through Wonderland. She sees the cookie below, this one right here. Is the expression on the cookie a statement? Why or why not? Remember, if I give you 2 prompts, so here's one of them here, right, asking you, is the expression on the cookie a statement? That's one question, and then the second one is asking you why or why not. The more important part of this answer is the second part, right? You could just guess and get it correct, but what I want you to do is to not to do that, right? I want you to try and there we go. Okay, excuse me. I want you to answer the question a little more thoroughly. Okay, so she sees the cookie below. This is it, right? Is the expression on the cookie a statement? Okay, in order to answer this, you need to know what a statement is. So here's what I would do. No, the expression on the statement is not a cookie. Expression on the, until I'm firing on 100 miles per gallon here. No, the expression on the cookie is not a statement. Okay, that's your first part. So I've answered this first one here. Don't just say no or nah or yeah. Tell me, no, the expression on the cookie is not a statement. A statement is a sentence, right, which is capable of being true or false. Here, comma, the cookie simply says, eat me. Eat me is a command telling Alice to eat the cookie. Commands are not true or false. Statements are capable of being true or false. Thus, the expression on the cookie is not a statement. Okay, so let's just take a second here to look at the answer that I wrote. I encourage you to do the same thing. I have typos. You may too. So make sure in a case like this where your spelling and your grammar count towards your grade, you run through it one more time and you make sure it's okay. So, no, the expression on the cookie is not a statement. So I've answered the first one. Why or why not? Now I'm going to give a definition of a statement. A statement is a sentence which is capable of being true or false. By the way, that may technically be that. There's this stuff with a restrictive clause and stuff I guess I should look at, but don't worry about it here. Never mind. Okay. A statement is a sentence which is capable of being true or false. Here the cookie simply says, eat me. Eat me, and notice the quotes here because I'm referring to the phrase, is a command telling Alice to eat the cookie. Commands are not true or false. Statements are capable of being true or false, thus the expression on the cookie is not a statement. Good? Okay, so that is one of them. Number 3, the Frog Brothers. Okay, Edgar Frog has the following message on his outgoing machine. Thanks for calling the Frog Brothers. If you're a vampire, then you don't eat garlic. Max eats garlic, thus Max is not a vampire. Translate Edgar's argument into standard form below. Okay, so when I say standard form, I mean number your premises and conclusions in the following format. So we know that Max is not a vampire is going to be our conclusion. Let's write out our very first premise. If you are a vampire, then you don't eat garlic. So if you are a vampire, then you don't eat garlic. Number 2, Max eats garlic, thus Max is not a vampire. All right, and then do a little outline here. Oops. And you're good to go. This is it. Standard form is just a way of making very clear what you're trying to prove, which is the premise down here, and then the supporting reasons you give for the conclusion. Okay, hopefully that helps. All right. Now, so number 4 refers to number 3. Now, please explain whether the argument you wrote out above is valid and or sound and why. Okay, so now I am going to tell the reader first what my conclusion is. So let's do this. The above argument is valid, but I do not know whether the above argument is sound. And then I might say because I do not know who Max is. So let's do this here. All right, so I'm giving my answer here first, right? So this is my answer that the argument is valid, but I don't know whether it's sound because I don't know who Max is, right? So here's how so I give my answer and then I'm going to give my definitions. A valid argument is one in which the premise is one in which, there are a couple ways you can phrase this. One in which, if the premises are true, then the conclusion must be false. Another definition you could give, I don't care which one you use, you don't need to use both. Valid argument is one in which it is not possible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false. Now, for us, you might not see a big difference in there, but there is kind of a funny technical case that comes up we'll talk about later. But for now, you can use either one of these definitions. It's perfectly fine. Here, okay, and that, right, so here, if premises 1 and 2 are true, then the conclusion 3 must follow. And hence the argument is valid. Okay, so in other words, if it's true that if you're a vampire, then you don't eat garlic, and Max eats garlic, then it must follow that Max is not a vampire. It's very similar to some of those problems that we had, which involved, if you're in San Francisco, then you're in California, you're not in California, so you're not in San Francisco. With the exception of some negations and stuff, it's very similar type of argument. But here, as long as you tell me what a valid argument is, and then you explain that if 1 and 2 are true, then 3 would have to follow, I'm good, right? Okay, so now we're going to talk about soundness. Never hurts if you want to give yourself little breathers, right, like in your answer, just to break it up a little bit, just so that it's easier to read each part of the answer. I know that's a lot easier to do on a tablet, on a computer, than a piece of paper, so don't worry about it. It's okay if you don't. Okay. A sound argument is one in which the argument is valid and the premises are true. Here, I do not know who Max is. Thus, I cannot evaluate whether or not Max eats garlic, and ultimately whether Max is a vampire. There you go. I'll take it. Now, this is your answer. And the thing that I like about it is, it's not just enough that you know what valid and sound means. It's that you understand that you can only evaluate soundness by looking in the actual world. You can't look in the actual world if you don't know what person we're talking about. Therefore, we can't really talk about whether this argument is sound. Okay? All right. Number 5. Let's see here how much time we're at. Okay, I'm going to have just to take a little breather, and then we'll start this up again probably at home. Number 5. Everyone in town knows and loves Juan the werewolf, but Juan does not like being a werewolf. He comes to you distraught and says, well, I changed into a werewolf on the full moon for the past 8 months, so I guess it's a complete certainty that I'll change into a werewolf forever. Can you explain to Juan whether it is a complete certainty that he will change into a werewolf forever? Be sure to explain to Juan what type of reasoning you're using and why that reasoning does or does not support his claim. Okay, so here we go. Can you explain to Juan whether... So remember, when you're running into this type of a question, make sure you answer every single question, because there are a couple of them in here, right? Can you explain to Juan whether it is a complete certainty he will change into a werewolf forever? So, Juan... Okay. Or just say I cannot explain, or I cannot assure Juan that he will change into a werewolf forever. Or you can say, I cannot tell Juan that he will change into a werewolf forever. That is because Juan is using inductive reasoning. In inductive reasoning, premises support but do not guarantee a conclusion. Here, although turning into a werewolf for the past 8 months makes it likely Juan will continue to change into a werewolf, it is not a certainty. Juan could either die before his next transformation, he could perform a medical procedure to transform. Now, I want to say you can perform a medical procedure to transform back into a normal person, whatever that means, right? Or his master werewolf could be defeated and he would revert back to being a person. The point is that there is no guarantee that Juan will continue to be a werewolf because he is using inductive reasoning. Okay, here we go. So let's highlight this and let's clean up a couple typos. Remember, just run through it again briefly in your mind, just in case you need to put in another word or another sentence, a little carrot stick or something. Never a bad idea. So you notice I'm kind of spotty here in my capitalization of inductive versus deductive. So try to keep it, if you can, keep it consistent. I don't care whether you do lowercase or uppercase. It should be uppercase for inductive reasoning, but as long as you're consistent, I'm not going to be as worried about it. Okay, so 2 questions here. Can I explain whether it's a complete certainty or change into a werewolf forever? Okay, so no, I can't do that. Be sure to explain to Juan what type of reasoning you're using. Okay, and why that reasoning does or does not support his claim. Okay. I cannot tell Juan that he will change into a werewolf forever. So that's your conclusion, right? Now you're going to give me your reasons for it. That is because Juan is using inductive reasoning. In inductive reasoning, premises support but do not guarantee a conclusion. Here, although turning into a werewolf for the past 8 months makes it likely Juan will continue to change into a werewolf, it is not a certainty. Juan could either die before his next transformation, he could perform a medical procedure to he could perform a medical procedure to transform back into a normal person, or his master werewolf could be defeated and he would revert back to being a person. The point is that there is no guarantee that Juan will continue to be a werewolf because he is using inductive reasoning. So there you go. Okay. All right, I'm going to take a little breather right now. Hey, wait a minute. Here we go. Okay, let's move on to number 6. I've magically transported to my house. Number 6. Why does it matter that we study logic? Provide 4 reasons and be sure to explain each. So to cut down the typing here, I've listed the 4 reasons, but I'm going to explain them a little bit for you guys here. As long as you give me the general reasons, good, but give me a sentence or so afterwards to really let me know that you understand what we're talking about. So why does it matter that we study logic? Provide 4 reasons and be sure to explain each. If it makes it easier, then you can number your answers like this, right? So that I can see, oh yeah, they've got all 4. So let's just suppose you started this way and you said, number 1, put the brain in charge, right? So what does it mean? Why are we studying logic? Well, to help put the brain in charge. Well, what does that mean? It means studying logic helps to develop the rational system of our brains. Right? This part of the brain, when developed, helps us to make better decisions. So the idea here is, and there are different ways that you can say this, right? Studying logic helps to develop the rational system of our brains as opposed to the emotional one. And just the idea is, look, we're all a combination of reason and emotions. That's fine and it's totally normal. But the argument here is, look, it's better to have our rational mind in charge of our lives and our bodies because it's better equipped to make more meaningful decisions, right? And this is kind of related to number 2, right? Why study logic? Because it's self-correcting. And what that means is, if I was simply just going with my heart and I made my life decisions based only on my heart, then when those decisions are wrong, I have no way of knowing that, right? Because I'm only using my emotions when I make a decision. So, for instance, let's suppose I just absolutely love this car. It's called a Coche, and I've got to have a Coche car no matter what happens, right? And even though all of the reviews of this car are horrible, I just saw the Coche and I need to have it, right? Well, I could buy that Coche and then I would have less money because now I need to devote more money to fixing the Coche because it's always breaking down, right? So the idea here is logic is self-correcting. As opposed to allowing emotions, right, to as opposed to emotions, we'll just start it that way. As opposed to emotions, logic is capable of correcting itself when it is in error. Emotions, though an important part of life, are not like this. Okay, that would be all you'd need to say, right? So, next one, better logic, better thinking, better life. And to elaborate on this, a better understanding of logic allows us to think more clearly and more deeply about the decisions we face. With greater clarity and depth of thought, we will find our thoughts more likely to be true, or something like that, right? So the idea is, look, if you enhance that part of your logical mind, you're going to make better decisions. And so when you're going to think better, right? Good thinking. And so you're going to live better. You'll be able to see things. You'll be able to anticipate things because you'll understand more about the relationship between connections of concepts and so forth. And so logic helps you in that way. Last, logic and reality share a shape. Now, this is kind of a funny way to put this. And we haven't talked about this greatly. But we will when we talk a little bit. We'll talk about the Jabberwock, know why, later, and bivalent logic. But we're not there yet. But the basic idea is that logic and reality share a shape. By studying logic, we can understand more about the world. There we are. Okay, so that is number 6. All right, so 7, 8, and 9 are all the same type of question. So I'm going to define validity here, and then I'll run it on this one. You'll find that 7 and 9 are fairly similar. 8 is kind of on its own. So let's do 7. Number 7. State whether the following argument is valid or sound and explain why. So you got to do 2 things. You got to tell me whether it is valid or sound and explain why. So what I'm really asking you here is it valid and sound, right? If it's not like it can be one or the other. So let's go ahead and answer this question. So say whether the argument is valid or sound and explain why. If you've already explained what validity is higher up in the exam, you can say definition of validity, or you can do something like this. Validity is C problem number, X above. Okay, so what you would do here is you're just referring me to a definition. If you've already responded and told me what validity is up higher in the exam, you do not need to rewrite it. But I will go ahead and rewrite it here. An argument is valid if it is not possible for, going a little too fast, for the premises to be true and the conclusion false. There are other ways to formulate this. An argument is valid if the premises, if true, guarantee the conclusion. I don't know if you guys can see me falling off the stage there. Probably doesn't matter. All right. And then you want to say a sound argument is an argument which is valid and the premises are actually true. All right. So these are your definitions, right? Right here. I'm going to put that in highlights. And then validity is, that's just a way that you could answer this. If you've already told me above what validity is, then don't worry about it. Just say validity is, C number whatever above. Soundness is, right? Soundness is, and then you can do the same thing, right? C problem, problem number X above, whatever it is. Okay, so this is your definitional part. You're just regurgitating. Now, what I want you to do next is to look at this argument and tell me whether or not it's valid. So let's take a peek. An argument is valid if the premises are true, they guarantee the conclusion. So let's look at this. Number one, all serpents eat eggs. Okay. Number two, Quetzalcoatl is a feathered serpent. Suppose it's true. 3, thus Quetzalcoatl eats eggs. Okay. When I'm talking about validity, I'm talking about if the premises are true, not are they actually true. Your gut may say, oh, look, all serpents eat eggs. That's false. It's not going to work. No, that's wholly incorrect, right? What we want to do is just say, if that's true, and if 2 is true, right? So if it's true that all serpents eat eggs, and it's true that Quetzalcoatl is a serpent, a feathered serpent, then Quetzalcoatl eats eggs. Perfect. So let's do this. The above argument is valid because if 1 and 2 are true, then 3 must also be true. Now, that's the easy, short kind of answer. But the better papers, the better exams will do a little more work, and they'll explain it a little bit differently. They'll say something like, if it is true that all serpents eat eggs, and it is true that Quetzalcoatl is a serpent, then necessarily Quetzalcoatl eats eggs. In other words, if the premises are true, then they force the conclusion to be true. Okay. Now, remember, we've already defined soundness up here. So now the question is this argument sound? A sound argument is one in which the argument is valid and the premises are actually true. So let's just try to evaluate whether or not sentence number 1 is true. Before we move on, it's important to note that you can only tell me if the argument is sound if it's first valid. If the argument I have you evaluate here is not valid, then there's no way it can be sound. Now, we know that the argument is valid because of this discussion right here. So the next thing you want to do is you want to tell me, you want to explain whether or not it's sound. So I'm going to type that up. The above argument is not sound because it is not actually true that all serpents eat eggs, right? And by serpents here we mean snakes, okay? Surely there's a snake somewhere that has not eaten an egg, right? But you don't need to stop there, right? The above argument is not actually true that all serpents eat eggs. Moreover, it is not clear that it is actually true that Quetzalcoatl is a feathered serpent. It is possible that is true, but it is also true that Quetzalcoatl is something else or a myth, right? I don't like this phrase right here, but it is possible that it is true, but Quetzalcoatl is not out in the world right now eating eggs. So, this gets a little bit into knowledge, right? So you might say, look, one, okay, it's not true that all serpents actually eat eggs. Okay, fair enough. But when you go to evaluate the truth of number 2, Quetzalcoatl is a feathered serpent, someone might say, number 3, Quetzalcoatl eats eggs. I'm sorry, you guys, I might as well stay on the right. Quetzalcoatl is a feathered serpent. Is it possible that Quetzalcoatl is really, really there, right? Quetzalcoatl really exists and it answers this description? I guess it's possible that that would be true, but in our normal way of speaking, right, we don't think of that. We don't think of Quetzalcoatl as being an entity that is alive and in the world right now that answers to this physiological description, right? So you can say, look, it's just not been established that it's true, right? So you want to at least try to link up your definition of soundness with the premises or the conclusions and whether or not they're actually true, right? So, so let's just stick with that second premise, and that would be sufficient. I'm not going to get into the egg eating and the conclusion. It's better just to evaluate soundness on the basis of the premises being true. The conclusion, of course, could still be false, and then it wouldn't be sound, but we'll just, for purposes of this exam, if it was known to be true that was a feathered serpent, maybe it was open to inspection, then the argument would be sound. But the facts are not clear enough. Thus, the argument is valid, but not sound. Okay, there we go. And remember, you always want to go through and check your grammar just really quick. If it is not possible, the premise is true and the conclusion false, good, an argument is valid. I'm sorry about these double spaces here. I learned to type on a typewriter, and so that's the way it is. And I'm not going to worry too much about these commas. A sound argument is an argument which is valid and the premises are actually true. There's a cleaner way to put that, but this is fine for right now. The above argument is valid because if 1 and 2 are true, then 3 must also be true. Remember, that's your basic answer. If it is true that all serpents eat eggs, and it is true that Quetzalcoatl is a serpent, then necessarily Quetzalcoatl eats eggs. In other words, if the premises are true, then they force the conclusion to be true. Good. The above argument is not sound because it's not actually true that all serpents eat eggs. Moreover, it is not clear that Quetzalcoatl is a feathered serpent. If it was known to be true to Quetzalcoatl, maybe it was open to inspection, then the argument would be sound. But the facts are not clear enough, thus the argument is valid but not sound. Perfect. Okay, let's do number 8. Now, remember, right away you can tell me this stuff right here. Right? Validity is blah, blah, blah. So what I'll do here is just to show you, right? Validity is, see problem number 7 above, right? Okay, and then you just pretend that you've written this bit, right? That's what I'm referring to, is this right here. So if you've written something like that early in your paper, just refer me to it again, okay? All right, here, the argument, okay, so first let's do validity and soundness. Most professors have bionic arms, okay? Where does he come up with these ideas? They're silly. I'm just kidding. Most professors have bionic arms. Angela Davis is a professor, thus Angela Davis has bionic arms. Okay. If it's true that most professors have bionic arms, and it's true that Angela Davis is a professor, does it follow that Angela Davis has bionic arms? No. Right? In order for that to be true, you would need, number one, to say all professors have bionic arms, right? So here's how we would do this. Here, here, even if it is true that most professors have bionic arms, right? And it is true that Angela Davis is a professor, then it does not follow that Angela Davis has bionic arms. If premise 1 said all professors ... then the argument would be valid. Because, okay, and then right here you can tell me the argument is, so here you can tell me the argument is not valid. Boom. And here you can tell me the argument is not sound. Because in order for an argument to be sound, it must first be valid. Okay. And that's your number 8. Okay, let's move on to number 9. So I'm going to refer you back to number 7 here, right? So let's go ahead and say, let's repeat our sentence here, right? Validity is this, soundness is this. So for number 9, we already know validity is this, validity is that. Number 9, state whether the following argument is valid or sound and explain why. Okay, so what I want to know is it valid and sound, or is it valid, right? Remember, it can't just be sound, but it could be valid and sound, or valid, but not sound and not valid. Okay, state whether the following argument is valid or sound and explain why. Number 1, no cats smoke crack. Number 2, Sylvester is a crack, therefore Sylvester doesn't smoke crack. Okay, so just tell me, this argument is valid because if no cats smoke crack and Sylvester is one of the cats, then he doesn't smoke crack. Period. Right? In other words, there is no way let's put it this way. In other words, if the premises 1 and 2 are true, then the conclusion 3 must be also true. Okay, now let's talk about soundness, right? This is what you want to tell me. I cannot determine if this argument is sound. This is because, remember, you've already told me what soundness is. I have no way to evaluate who or what Sylvester is. Does this term, right? If the term referred to an actual cat who had not smoked crack, right, then the argument would be sound. There is no such facts. There are no facts present. There are no such facts present. There you go. Now, the reason why these are good is because when you are telling me that, for instance, the reason why these are good questions, when I give you an argument, instead of just giving you an argument that's obviously valid and it's obviously sound, I've given you a case where you have to explain why you don't know if the argument is sound, right? And in explaining to me why you don't know that this is sound, you're demonstrating to me, oh, I know, not only do I know the definition, but I can tell you why I can't use it properly here. That is a much more robust and deeper understanding than just saying, oh yeah, it's sound and I'm referring to the other stuff earlier. Okay, at least in theory. Okay, so now we have couple more arguments here at the end. But let's go ahead and clean up with number 10, 11, 12, and we'll do 10, 11, and 12, and then we'll take a little teensy break, okay? All right. Number 10, what does Cookie Monster have to show us about logic? Cookie Monster shows us that we should approach logic. I guess I should have really capitalized that. That's bad news, but that's okay. The way in which he approaches cookies enthusiastically. I know this sounds like a silly point, and to some extent it is, but you have to keep it in mind that you will do wonderful and great things if you bring genuine effort to the discipline of logic. For a lot of people, you've never seen logic before. In fact, for virtually everyone. And when you're learning something that new, it can be very discouraging. And you have to keep that in mind. There's no rule in the universe that says that you cannot learn logic. Despite sometimes feeling that way, it's incorrect. So this is your short, sweet, simple, nice points, right? Easy puntos. Easy puntos. All right, let's do number 11. What does the Hulk have to tell us about validity, soundness, and logic? Just as the Hulk is a monstrously strong creature, so too validity. Oh gosh, that's awful sentence structure. Just as the Hulk is a monstrously strong creature, the tools of validity and soundness are equally strong. That is, validity and soundness allow one to cut through and smash misunderstandings. This will come up even more obviously when we get into fallacies. People tend to use fallacies a lot. In other words, people tend to make errors in reasoning pretty frequently. And when you understand the relationship between premises and conclusions, you'll be able to see the errors that people make. And you'll look like a superhero, right? You'll say, well, that's an interesting point, but it actually doesn't follow from what you've said so far. And those connections will be very, very strong in helping to evaluate people and the arguments that they give. So there you go, Hulk smash. Okay, Number 12, is ouch a statement, why or why not? Okay, I'm asking you for a statement. I'm asking you a question and then an explanation. Start with your definition, right? A statement is a sentence or expression. You don't have to put or expression in there. Which can be true or false. If someone said, ouch, it would be incorrect to say, to reply, true, right? Or false. That is because ouch does not say something that is possibly true or false. Okay. One point I wanted to make about this, and we did talk about this in class. The key to this is understanding that everybody else is going, okay, you're already done talking and the answer's there, so I'm going to fast forward. Go for it, I don't care. But for the rest of you who want to know the trick, I don't know, maybe that seems a little weird, but the general idea here is that someone could be faking it and they could say ouch, right? So I'm sitting here and, I don't know, something randomly happens and ouch, right? And it could all be fake and I'm not actually hurt. Even if that happened, right? I had a hammer and I went, bonk and ouch, even though I'm not in any pain. Right? Somebody wouldn't say false. They might say you're faking, but do you notice that statement, you are faking, is itself a statement? When you say ouch, you might in some circumstances mean to say I am in pain, but that's not what you're saying, right? You're just saying ouch, and ouch is not the same thing as I am in pain. And so for that reason, ouch is not a statement. Okay? All right. Premise. What is a premise? A premise is a statement which supports the conclusion. There you go. Premise is a statement. And remember, the nice thing about having the statement here, which, that, restrictive clauses, non-restrictive clauses, I'm not going to be super upset if you have a comma and a that, or you don't have a comma and you have a which. It's fine. As long as your sentence is a sentence, I'm not going to be too worried about your commas and restrictive clauses, right? A premise is a statement which supports the conclusion or a conclusion. There you go. What is a conclusion? A conclusion is a statement which is supported by premises. There you go. And in some cases, you could have one premise and one conclusion, but we will not get into that. All right, so that's number 14. We're doing great. So 13 and 14 are super short and super easy. All right, number 15. What is inductive reasoning? How is it different from deductive reasoning? All right. Inductive reasoning inductive reasoning I don't want to say occurs. That sounds weird. Is when the premises of an argument support but do not guarantee a conclusion. Deductive reasoning is when the premises of an argument guarantee, I'm going to say when the, I'm just going to go with that. The inductive when the premises of an argument guarantee the truth of the conclusion. And just to make this cleaner, I'll put parallel structure in there. So Just to clear up what I did here, I made these two answers read a little more closely to one another. You could have it a little differently, that's fine. You don't need to memorize this exact definition to get all of the points, but you do need to explain, hey, inductive reasoning, that's your key, remember? Inductive reasoning is where the premises support the conclusion, but they don't push the conclusion all the way to truth. It's still possible to have all of the premises true and the conclusion be false. On the other hand, deductive reasoning is when the premises of an argument guarantee the truth of the conclusion. And there you go. Okay, so that's 15. All right, let's handle number 16. We're just flying here, right? We're doing a great job. Okay. And I don't tell any jokes during this because you can pause it and go find a joke online or something, right? State whether the following argument is valid or sound and explain why. Okay. So, remember we have our little trick here about validity and soundness. So let's go up here to this. Okay. So you will write something like that. And then you will say, so before I just write my answer out, let's talk about it. Again, state whether the following argument is valid or sound and explain why. I might clean the grammar on the final exam for this. It's already written, but I could still clean up that phrase. But the idea here is I want you to tell me if it's valid, and if it's valid, then is it sound, right? That's what I want to know. So, and then tell me why. So let's do, all humans have 9 noses. Okay. Remember, I'm not asking you, is it actually true right now that all humans have 9 noses? I'm saying, to determine whether or not the argument is valid, I assume that 1 and 2 are true, and then ask, do they guarantee 3? So, if I assume all humans have 9 noses, okay, and Simone de Beauvoir is a human, yeah, then it would have to follow that she has 9 noses. So, you've referenced your prior definitions for validity and soundness, and now you're going to do your discussion, right? So, here, if it was true that all humans had 9 noses, and it was also true that Simone de Beauvoir is a human, then it would necessarily follow that Simone de Beauvoir has 9 noses. Okay, now, okay, so then you could say, or you know what I would do here? You can do, the argument is in fact valid. You can tell me ahead of time, or you can do it at the end. You say, so the argument is valid. I'm sorry this is stretching across 2 spots, you guys. I hope you can read that answer. Now, as to soundness, right, you can just tell me this argument is in fact, this argument is not sound. This is because 1 is false, right? All humans have 9 noses. That's false. This is because 1 is false. All humans do not have 9 noses. There you go. That's it. Because remember, you've already defined soundness for me up above. All right, let's do number 17. Remember, you can reference your prior definitions above. Right? So again, this is just another one of these types of questions. All right. If it is raining, then Professor Veda is carrying his umbrella. Number 2, Professor Veda is carrying his umbrella. 3, thus it is raining. So how do we evaluate this? Okay. Suppose it's true that if it's raining, then I carry my umbrella. Right? Any day it rains, I always carry my umbrella. I always keep it with me. I don't like getting my hair wet or something like that. Now suppose that it's also, this is a little bit tricky, remember. The question is, assume that it's true that if it's raining, then I carry my umbrella. I'm not saying that it is raining. I'm saying if it's raining, then I carry my umbrella, right? Then I say, 2, I'm carrying my umbrella. 3, thus it is raining. So here this argument is not valid. So here I'm just going to say this argument is not valid, right? This is because even if premise 1 is true and Professor Bit happens to be carrying his umbrella, premise 2 is true, it does not follow that it is raining. Professor Vitt could be carrying his umbrella for another reason. Perhaps Professor Vitt is carrying the umbrella because it is super hot, or he is concerned for his welfare and needs to carry the umbrella for defense from the Jabberwock or something like that, right? So this is your little argument here. This is just me being silly, by the way. You really don't need to carry that in, but you know, I don't mind if you use a fun or colorful example or something like that in the exam, provided it demonstrates understanding and it's not overtly, you know, objectionable or something in content. Okay, number 18. Woo, woo, woo. Last one. What type of argument is this? Explain why. Okay. Remember, there are 2 kinds of arguments. There's an inductive argument and a deductive argument. Essentially, what I've done here is I'm asking you the same information as number 15, right? But I'm asking you to apply it to a certain instance. So if you knew the rules, the definitions for problem number 15, then you should be able to apply them here in 18. So there are 2 kinds of questions, right? There are questions that just ask you for a raw definition. You have to spit it out. And then there are definitions that ask you to apply the elements of that definition to a new situation. And that's what I'm asking you to do here in 18. I'm saying, what type of argument is this? So, and then explain why. So let's just go and start off with it. This argument, hold on, let me read it out loud for you. Number 1, premise number 1. A clock is complex. Premise number 2, a clock has a designer. Premise number 3, the universe is complex. Number 4, thus the universe has a designer. Okay, number 4, this argument is an inductive argument. Capitalize inductive, that's fine. If you forgot to do it or something, I'm probably not going to lose a lot of sleep over it. Okay, this is an inductive argument. An inductive argument is one in which the premises of the argument support but do not guarantee the conclusion. Here, if 1 and 2 were true, if 1, 2, and 3 were true, they would, so they might, or they could support, I'll say that, the conclusion. In other words, if it's true that a clock is complex, and it's true that a clock has a designer, and it's true that the universe is complex, then maybe that's some support for the argument that the universe has a designer, right? But it's not a guarantee. At best, it's inductive, right? So However, it is still possible that 1 and 2 and 3 are all true, and yet the universe does not have a designer. Thus, this is an inductive argument. All right, here we go, you guys. Got it. Okay. Please keep in mind, I'm just using this as an example of an argument, an inductive argument. We talked about other versions in class and stuff, sort of inductive arguments by analogy. We talked about the case, right, where the court actually determined that these two cases were so similar, despite being separated by 100 years or whatever, 80 years, that they were similar enough, right? And that's all you're saying here. Someone is just trying to say that these things are similar enough, that X has these traits, Y has these traits, X also has this other trait here, and so Y probably also has that trait. Later on, we can talk about what makes better inductive arguments. Some inductive arguments by analogy better than others. But for now, if you can see that argument and you understand it's an inductive argument because 1, 2, and 3 could be true, but 4 could still be false, then you're fine. There's a huge literature on inductive arguments that look like this. And then there's a literature on deductive versions of this argument. They're called teleological arguments, and usually arguments for the existence of God. If anybody's interested in those, please let me know. There's a huge literature on that stuff, and it's lots of fun. Philosophers have been working for centuries to try and figure out, can we develop better or worse versions of these arguments? How convincing are they? But that settles it. That is your mock exam. Now give me just a minute. I'm going to pause this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead here and just take a peek and see what's on the final, or on the exam. So you're going to be asked, what is logic? You're going to be asked, Alice is walking through Wonderland. I'll put the cookie picture in there. You're going to get Juan the werewolf in there. You're going to get why does it matter? We study logic, provide 4 reasons and explain each. You're going to get the Sylvester example, the raining argument, the Angela Davis bionic arms argument. Then you're going to have the Cookie Monster asking about logic, Hulk talking about validity and soundness, and then that final inductive argument by analogy for number 10. Okay, so there's your spoilers. You're welcome if you made it all the way to the end. So I encourage you guys to study, but I want you guys to feel very strong about this exam. Exam number 1 is just a way to launch into the next part of the course, which will be categorical logic, essentially a version of the logic developed by Aristotle. It's pretty much what it is, but we'll do some modern stuff with it. Good luck, you guys, on Monday morning regarding your exam. I know you guys are going to do super well, and I'm so excited to take what we learn from this exam and then actually start to apply it to logic. It'll be a blast. Email me or tweet me if you have any questions or concerns.